Political Connections continues now with Political Times. Bay News 9 and our partners in the St. Petersburg Times Political Unit bring you thought-provoking interviews with newsmakers from the Bay Area and beyond.
And welcome back, everyone. I'm Al Rochelle. Thank you for joining us. Joining me right now, the editor of the St. Petersburg Times, political editor Adam Smith, who will introduce our guest and ask the question. Adam, good to see you.
You too. Thanks, Al. We are lucky to have Tampa mayoral candidate Bob Buckhorn here. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here, Adam. Al, good to see you again.
This is shaping up to be a wild race, and it appears to be Dick Greco versus somebody else. A lot of other candidates. What sets you apart? What makes you the best candidate?
Well, I think if you use that analogy, it becomes a race between the past and the future. It becomes a race whether Tampa's going to move forward or whether we're going to move backwards. I think what sets me apart is the reason why I'm running, and that reason is very simple. It's two little girls named Colleen Buckhorn and Grace Buckhorn, and kids of families all over this community who want their children to come home here someday and raise their family. If we're going to be competitive, and we are not now, with Raleigh, Durham, and Austin, Texas, and San Diego, we've got to do things differently, Al. We can't rely on the same old strategies to get us to that next level. I think I'm the best person to do that. I look forward to the race. I'm in a race with a lot of friends. It's going to be competitive, but I think when people make that decision on March 1st, they're going to decide whether this community, this city, which has all the potential in the world, moves forward or whether it moves backwards.
What do you think is the biggest number one issue in the minds of the voters? Because when it comes to the mayor's race, people seem to get stuck on things like crime, housing, streets.
Well, I've knocked on 20,000 doors, Al, and in those conversations on front porches all over Tampa, people are worried about their economic future. They sit around that dining room table and they wonder how they're going to make ends meet. They want a mayor that is focused on the future, that knows how to create the jobs of the future. Because I can promise you, the jobs of the future are never going to be created by the politicians of the past or the policies of the past. So what they tell me on those front porches is they say, Bob, I want you out there working 18 hours a day to get us out of this economic ditch, to make us more competitive, to make this a city that it once was, where everybody in America talked about us as the place to be.
So specifically, what do you do as mayor to regrow Tampa?
Well, I think you do two things, Adam. I think one of the things you do is internal. You strip that bureaucracy down. We are known right now as a place that is very difficult to do business. So you make the regulatory process user-friendly. You make City Hall an ally as opposed to an enemy or an obstacle. You get the regulatory process so we're not applying suburban development codes on urban infill projects. You do all of that in the first year. The other part of that is a more long-term strategy. It's a strategy about how we go out and compete elsewhere in the country. What we do with the research at USF that's being spun off. Do you know that we are the second largest recipient, upwards of $400 million of applied research coming to USF? You know what the challenge of the next mayor is? Is to find a way to move that from the petri dish to the marketplace, to create those jobs of the future, whether it's M2 Gen, whether it's taking the jobs that are being created at Moffitt Cancer Center and all the research that's taking place out there and moving that to the marketplace. We need to look at international trade, Adam. We need to make Tampa the gateway to the Americas.
Let me ask you about the past a little bit. You were very well closely associated with lap dancing, trying to restrict lap dancing and massage parlors, etc. Is that still a concern? Do you think that's a big problem?
No, it's not. It wasn't my biggest issue back then. It certainly took on a life of its own, and it clearly will not be it now. People want me focused on jobs.
Do you regret that?
Do I regret it? I think I could have done a better job framing that discussion. I mean, that wasn't me trying to impose my moral code on someone else. It was merely a quality of life issue that went along with the other quality of life ordinances that I passed to take care of our neighbors and take care of our streets. That took on a life of its own. Obviously, I caught the brunt of it. It is what it is. I think it was the right thing to do at the time, but it's certainly not anything I care about now.
Mayor Iero spent a lot of time focusing on things like the riverfront, the Riverwalk area, as well as the art museum. Is that where we need emphasis? Because it seems like that's a lot of things where it does benefit the city. There are a lot of people living out in the burbs or just outside the city. They're scratching their heads and going, well, how did I benefit from something like that?
Well, it's important, but we can't get ourselves out of this economic ditch unless we add value to the tax roll. I can't do things like finish the Riverwalk. I can't do things like make the river the focal point for our downtown development. I can't do anything unless I can find ways to get that permitting process open, where we are known as a place that people want to come and do business, where folks will come and invest their money, which will add value to the tax rolls, which allows me to do some of these other things. So job number one, pure and simple, 18 hours a day, is find a way to make us more competitive, both internationally, both externally to the city and internally to the city, so that we are a place that folks, again, I remember, because I sat there, when Charlotte, North Carolina used to come to Tampa, Florida to see how we did things. You guys remember it as well. That's what I want to get back to. And if I can leave that legacy, and 20 years from now people say this was the mayor that got us to that next level, I'll be happy.
And now people in Tampa and Tampa Bay are going to Charlotte to look at their light rail, among other things. Is light rail a priority or is it dead?
I think multimodal transportation is a priority for me. I don't think it's dead. It shouldn't be dead. I think any big city around the country that we compete with has some format of multimodal transportation. It's going to come back in a different form and a different fashion. It ought to be done, I think, on a more regional basis where we connect Pasco and Pinellas and Hillsborough County. We need more specificity in terms of what that plan is. I think this plan failed partially because folks weren't sure what they were getting for their money.
So, and meanwhile, Governor Rick Scott is hinting that he may pull the plug on high-speed rail between Tampa and Orlando. Would that be a mistake?
I think it would, and I would hope that he wouldn't. I mean, not only in the short term in terms of job creation, but in the long term connecting two very large urban areas in an important corridor for this state. I mean, eventually Orlando and Tampa is going to be one big megalopolis. We need the ability to get back and forth. That high-speed rail, particularly given that it's gas tax dollars that normally will go to South Dakota if we don't get our share, I really hope that he reconsiders that and moves forward on it.
All right, Bob Buckhorn, candidate for mayor of Tampa. Thanks for joining us. Sure. Good luck, Bob.
It's good to see you guys. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.